Okay. Hello, Servus, grüß euch. Welcome back to the podcast. He is a bird. I am your host, Sean Shelton. We are starting a new segment today, something that I thought of after the Federation, the Austrian Football Federation, pushed back the start date of the AFL season. I was thinking to myself, um, how can we still have some sort of competition? How can we have some type of event or battle where the AFL teams are competing? And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be interesting if we talked about which team names would win in a battle? And it was kind of depicted off of the Mike Leach thing, where he kind of listed the mascots in the Pac-12 and competed. So we're going to do that with the AFL, and there's no better person to be able to do this than my father, James Shelton. Dad, how you doing? Thank you for coming.
Good, Sean. Thanks for having me. I was thinking this is kind of sad. This is what it's come to with no football.
You got to do what you got to do, though.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you have NBA players playing video games against each other, and that's ESPN headline news. So this is better than that.
Okay, I agree.
Let me give you a qualifier of why my father is the perfect person to decide this. Because for this would have been my sixth season. So the last 5 seasons with the Raiders, before every game, he would send me and my teammates, because I would start to share them because they were so good, motivational messages. And oftentimes they were based on the city or the team name of the team we were playing. And so which he'll demonstrate shortly, is an expert on all the mascots of the team names of all the teams in the AFL. And to give you an example, this was the message that I received prior to this year's semifinal, the 2019 AFL semifinal against the Danube Dragons. And it's entitled Macabre's Dance. According to Hindu legend, the supreme deity Krishna once crossed paths with a river-dwelling, multi-headed dragon known as Kalia. Is it Kalia?
Mm-hmm.
Seeing how the creature's presence poisoned the water and the land, Krishna decided to destroy him. Without further ado, he leapt into the river and created a whirlpool to draw Kalia's attention. Annoyed by the disturbance, Kalia attacked but found Krishna to be a tougher opponent than expected. Flame and water did not harm the young god. Kalia's teeth, though huge and sharp, made no impression on Krishna's flesh. At length, Krishna led Kalia to the surface. There he jumped onto the dragon's heads and began to dance. With his arms down and to his side, he swayed his body from left and right in a very disturbing way. I love that they put that in there, in a very disturbing way. Probably like my touchdown
Your dance was
celebration.
disturbing too.
Probably
Yeah.
similar. Yeah. When Krishna had crushed the head beneath his feet, he jumped to the next and repeated the process, hopping from one to the other like so many stepping stones. Kalia would have died if it were not for the mercy or the intervention of his wives, who appeared just in time to beg Krishna for his mercy. He agreed to let Kalia live, opting for banishment instead. But the fact remains that he could have killed the dragon with a dance. Now it all makes sense why you introduced your new dance during last week's games. It was in preparation for today's game against the Danube river-dwelling dragons. It appears that you have already mastered this dance, so dance early and dance often and crush them. But if their cheerleaders beg for mercy, do not totally destroy them. Just banish them from the Austrian Bowl once again. Have fun today, and I hope to see you dancing, a lot of dancing, not only from you and Habertine, but all the Raiders. So these are weekly messages that I get. And so not only in the AFL, but also in the CFL. So he has written, let's see, on average 16 for the last 5 years. So you are by far the leading expert in information or knowledge about team names in the AFL.
It's good that I'm an expert on something.
Yeah, I mean the leading expert. The leading expert. So with that being said, our first to kind of paint the picture of what this actually is, we're going to be talking about 2 mascots team names in a bracket and a tournament that I've created at random. All the rankings, it's 8 teams. They're all ranked and seeded at random. And what will happen is we'll talk about both mascots, the history of them, actually define what they are, and then we'll hypothesize what a battle between them would look like. And I'll get more into that when we actually talk about the battle. But the first matchup is actually going to be against the Giants and the Rangers. So, Father, what can you tell us about the Giants?
The Giants, with you playing them twice a year, I have done a lot of research on Giants, and there's interesting that there's Giants, different myths all over the world. Giants are always large, extremely large, always very, very strong, have enormous, size and strength. Sometimes they can have the upper body or torso of a human and have serpentine type legs. But it's interesting, everywhere around the world there are giants. And generally, the other common denominator with giants is the intelligence. They're usually dumb, not very smart creatures. A lot of times cannibalistic. A lot of times they will eat humans. And the other thing that I think is interesting, and I'm looking at in this particular instance, is the size can vary from very, very big, but looking at kind of the European type myths of giants, we're looking at where 10, 12, 13 feet tall.
Which for you, mainly my audience is European, so that would be about 3.5 meters, 4 meters in height. And they're also categorized stereotypically as being extremely violent, correct?
Correct. Yeah, very, very violent. There were some instances of nice giants, but they ended up getting pissed and became violent. So violence is another, very, very violent, and like I said, a lot of times ended up with actually not just defeating humans, but eating them.
Okay. And we also, on the other side with the Rangers, we also had to define what Rangers were. You had told me that they were like hunter and gatherer, wilderness type European Rangers,
Like woodsmen,
and woodsmen in European history. There's also Rangers in the military, type of infantrymen, specialized infantry, basically. But after looking at their logo, the logo is a man wearing a cowboy hat with a face mask, and a big star on the background and a star on the hat. So obviously they're indicating that they're Texas Rangers. So what can you tell us about the Texas Rangers?
Well, the Texas Rangers have kind of gotten a mythical, status too, with a lot of their exploits. They were the first state-generated, kind of law enforcement organization in the United States, and really were founded by Stephen F. Austin, which some people refer to as father of Texas. And initially, Texas was a Mexican territory. There were settlers, that were out there on the frontier, and they were being attacked by local Indian tribes or bandits coming across the border from Mexico, and they needed protection. So originally, the Texas Rangers were founded to protect those frontier families out there from from Indians or from Mexican bandits. But then, their existence kind of morphed, and they acted as scouts during the war between Texas and Mexico for Texas independence, and were a big part of that war. And they also were big in the Mexican American War. When Texas was actually part of the U.S., they actually served in the Army, and then after that, they went kind of back to being scouts for the Confederacy, because Texas seceded from the Union, was part of the Confederate States, and they acted more like scouts. And then after the Civil War, they kind of went back to being more law enforcement. But they always were more like guerrilla fighters.
Hmm.
They weren't a large group, but they were very effective at coming in fast, acting as guerrillas, guerrilla warfare, very adept at fighting from horseback. In fact, they were some of the first soldiers that figured out how to reload while they were still riding their horses, instead of stopping and having to reload.
Hmm.
So very, I mean, their exploits, including bringing in very famous outlaws in the United States, like John Wesley Hardin, or Sam Bass.
Hmm.
Like I said, they've got mythical type status here in the United States, and especially in Texas.
And I think what some European listeners don't realize is Texas was actually an independent country for several years, and so the Texas Rangers are actually, out of necessity, their militia, their military for a
Yes.
short period of
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what is a common characteristic of a Texas Ranger? What would a single Texas Ranger look like from weaponry, size, build, intelligence, etc.?
Well, I mean, they're going to be average, size. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing, they weren't enormous, people or anything like that. So average size. Their background, they could have been, European descent, European settlers. They could have been, actually, some were actually, Mexican descendants that stayed in Mexico. So nothing special about physical size. They were very adept with the weapons that they had. They were some of the first people ever to use the Colt 6-shooter. The U.S. Army didn't use the Colt 6-shooter, and they're the ones that kind of made that famous. Also
Which is a
used rifles.
semi-automatic pistol.
Well,
Where
just an ability to shoot 6 shots off very
exactly,
quickly with a
exactly,
revolver, with a
right.
revolving chamber. But they were some of the first to use Colt, and Colt
Mhm.
had a 5 shooter, and then later the 6-shooter, which they kind of made famous. Also rifles, they were very good with rifles. And like I said, guerrilla warfare. Sometimes they would be in the woods, and they were picking off Mexican military or whoever, or the Indians. So yeah, basically cowboys. I mean, cowboys that would serve their time as Texas Rangers and then go back and be ranchers.
Okay.
Um,
So, moving forward in this hypothetical battle. So what we're going to do is to put context and put them in arena. What we're going to do is we're going to put them on 120 yards, or a normal length football field. They are not allowed to leave the football field. So it's a football field sized arena. And on this football field, if you had yard lines, we're going to go 11 on 11. So you have 11 Texas Rangers on one side at the 35-yard line, and 11 Giants, which you've already classified, on the other 35-yard line. So you get a 30-yard cushion between the two parties. Okay. The Rangers, right, how we're defining them, have the weaponry of a rifle and a pistol, which would be normal for them.
Okay. Yep.
They're not going to be on horseback. We take all transportation out. So they're going to be on foot. And then you have the Giants, obviously. Wasn't common for them to use weapons. They didn't need to use weapons. So then you have 11 Giants on the other side of the ball, other side of the field. What are your initial thoughts about the strengths, or what the Giants would be using to their advantage, and then vice versa for the Rangers as well?
Okay, well, I think and I'm trying to take in this into context of that. You're taking the Giants and you're making them Graz Giants, right? And you're taking the Rangers and Texas Rangers and having some attributes of moodling,
Okay.
also. So I think the Graz Giants kind of lined up on the 35, and they would just line up across the field, nothing fancy, nothing changes, pretty much base vanilla, and just charge down the field, and try to close that gap. Giants, even though they were large, could probably move fairly quickly, with just the long strides that they would take. So I think they could close that gap very quickly. And I think what they would do is just try to get a hold of the Rangers, and once they got a hold of them, it was over. They
Yeah,
just start tearing them apart.
exactly.
And then don't know if they would tear them apart and then eat them later after they tore them all apart, or start munching on them as they went.
Yeah.
But it could be kind of a melee, because I mean they could,
Right. They would want to
they
close space and get
yeah,
hands on.
right. And once
Right.
they got rid of the 11 on the field, they would probably head to the sideline and
And
you
what
know and go
and what
after
would
their cheerleaders and coaches.
what would the Rangers want to do? What would
I think the
the Rangers do?
Rangers, they're kind of out of their element.
Mhm.
You got them out there on the field. You got them lined up across the field. Kind of like the way the British Army used to fight. Back
Mhm.
in Revolutionary War type tactics.
Exactly.
That really wasn't them. So they're lined up out there with their rifles, and I think that they would try their best to try to use their rifles to make headshots, to the Giants, similar to what David versus Goliath,
Yeah,
make a
exactly.
temple
The
shot
the
or a
eye or
shot
the
in,
temple has always been a
yeah,
weakness for
eye,
Giants through history.
temple, something, trying to make those. And then you know what? They probably would take out a few of the Giants as the Giants charged towards them. But I think when it got close quarters, when they pulled their 6-shooters out, even if they emptied the 6-shooter into the Giant, I think the Giant would still keep moving forward and
Yeah.
keep attacking. So I think they take out a few, maybe not even half of the Giants as they charge. So maybe they take out 4 of them, and there's 7 that still show up. And when they got there and met them at their 35, I think it would be the Rangers would be in a lot of trouble.
Right. The best strategy for the Rangers would try to retreat and use as much of the field as possible. But were the Rangers known as being military advanced in tactics? Were they trained in that regard, or were they just guerrilla warfare, go take out a small unit and get out?
No, they really weren't. They really
Okay.
weren't, a trained military organization, where you're right. If they, strategically, they could have, had a first line, a second line, or, make shots, fall
Yeah, yeah,
back,
yeah.
use the field, right? That, it could have been a strategy.
Right.
But that's not really what they were. They were, they were riding on their horses, guerrilla warfare, hit and,
And get
just
out.
like
Yeah.
guerrilla warfare, they hit and get out, hit and
Mhm.
get out. So, having to line up on the field like that, it really took them out of their element. And you'd have to look at, the Texas Rangers didn't even use that much strategy. I'm not sure how much the Modeling Rangers would use strategy either.
So, uh, so it sounds like you already know what would happen, but what would you, if this all played out, what would you hypothesize being the final?
Well, I think the final is the Giants lose 3 to 4 players,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the 7 that do make it down to the Rangers 35-yard line, would tear the Rangers players apart, and eat them. Like I said, probably whoever else is around, take care of them too. So I think it'd be kind of a crushing defeat, and it would be hard for the Rangers to come back when they basically, not only did they lose, they were consumed.
Yeah, it's a tough matchup. I think the strengths of the Giants are really the weakness of the Rangers, and not putting them on horseback's tough. But no, when we get into later battles, nobody gets transportation; everybody's on foot. But maybe the Rangers would have done better against the Panthers. Maybe they would have done better against the Rangers. But I think with the Giants, it's a really, really tough matchup because,
It's a tough matchup, and like I
yeah,
said, taking the horses away from the Rangers, confining them to a football field, making them line up on the 35, it really put them at a great disadvantage.
right. So the winner of the first matchup against the Giants and the Rangers, the Giants win convincingly. But I feel like later on with some matchups, the Giants won't have it so easy. I think their lack of intelligence and their maybe lack of mobility might come in to bite them in the ass later.
Well, they're
But
big. We talked about a lot of their strengths, but their
yeah,
biggest, and didn't really talk about their biggest weakness is the
yeah,
intelligence, right?
yeah,
And historically, the heroes and myths all around the world, historically, they defeated them not by strength and not by brute force, but by intelligence and by
yeah.
being clever.
Right.
And I
Which
think
is
that,
also not a strength of the Rangers, unfortunately, because a lot
right,
of them
yeah,
were, like you said, they weren't trained in military forces.
no,
They were recruited thugs, kind of, if you will. Some of them.
yeah, and like I
Yep.
said, that that military strategy was not part of their
Right.
repertoire. Yeah.
Right. So, in our first matchup, Giants win. I'm very excited about this segment. I think it's kind of the whole point is to distract people from what's actually going on in the world, which is not so great. So if we can distract them for a little bit and talk about something as stupid as if 11 Giants would beat 11 Rangers, that's the whole goal. Let me know what you guys think. If we got something wrong, if we overlooked something, or if we're completely right. Con- uh, um, yeah, comments or even disagreements is actually encouraged. So let us know what you think. Next matchup. We have a very interesting matchup, probably more interesting than this week's. We have the Vikings against the Steel Sharks. So stay tuned for that. The first matchup was a decisive win, but we're looking forward to the next one. Pops, thank you so much. Thank you for your mind and your expertise.
No, it was very, very enjoyable, Sean. I look forward to the next match. Thank you.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye. Yeah, mom's coming down the stairs, so I gotta shut. We're recording.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
Did you hear?
What?
Did you hear her? Or?
Well, you heard her, and you always hear a bird every now and again. So
Yeah, I'm right
shutting the window would
outside.
probably
So,
be.
okay.
All right.
Well, it is fitting though. He has a bird, right?
Very
Where
true.
did you get the bird from? I have a bird.
Probably.
I have a bird too.
I think I got
Your
the
crazy
bird
parents.
in German sense, yeah, from questionable parenting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
that usually does
it
it.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
All
okay.
right,
Well, I'm going
pops.
to shut the door because I don't know. Did you hear Bella barking at one point?
No, I think that was okay.
Okay. She was barking upstairs. She came running down a couple of times. So I'm going to shut the door and remind your mother that we're recording.
Not that
Because
hard.
these windows down here are plastic, right?
Yeah.
They don't stop anything.
She didn't see the on air sign outside. We need to get you one.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. So let me tell her, and then you're going to send me another link.